I really want to talk a little bit about our our routine of reading books, and because now I see you more and more involved to help men and reading books that empower you first, and then you realize how this can serve others. So I wanted to share a little bit of, because every time I like something, I want to share with my community. And I'm loving the book that you're reading recently called The Way of Superior Men. I think the world needs to know a lot more about that book, so you are the best person to talk about it. So what does that book mean to you as a man?
So yeah, The Way of the Superior Man, David Dada. So for me, it's giving you a framework for not just how you show up in a relationship, and how you show up with your partner, but also how you show up in life. The focus of the book is looking at masculinity, so not necessarily men, but masculinity, and what masculinity means, and how to direct masculinity in order to show up as yourself. So not necessarily, trying to be authoritative and falling into toxic masculinity, not suppressing your masculinity and hiding who you really are, but showing up and letting yourself be yourself. And also, thinking about what does femininity mean, and how should the masculine show up and interact with the feminine. It's very much aimed at men, and I was in two minds as whether we should read it together. So there are a couple of times I've come up with topics on that where I thought this might be a bit sensitive. So I'm going to give you a question and say, given that this is a book that's targeted at men, how have you found going through and listening to what the author David Dada says about men and masculinity?
Well, I remember when we started a chapter, and you're opening that next chapter and looking at it. I said, "Ooh, I'm not sure I'm supposed to do this, but I'm going to take the risk," because you didn't know how I'm going to take it. And even though it is a book to address men, I think this is a book for women to read as well. And now that we are going to the end of the book, I have a strong desire to give it also to our sons and make sure that the boys prepare themselves to be real men. Like, I love the concept of superior men, to be the real men out there. And the way I'm taking it, like, now I understand men better. When they behave in a way they behave, I don't take it anymore the way I used to. Like, for example, remember when you're reading, like, when a man is looking at a woman in the street and I said, "Whoa, where is he going now?" And she's very sexy, she's full of energy, radiating. He doesn't need to suppress himself, but he doesn't need to also be aggressive with it. Just take that feminine energy, keep it inside, and use it for good. Use it for sharing it and that energy can be produced for creativity, for the real love when you come home or wherever your love is, for work, for different projects, and respect and honor. So at least this is how I took it. So what exactly means? Because many times we discuss when a man is looking at women around, usually the way they think, their brain is a little bit different from us. But what did this book change to you?
So I think, expanding on that, there are two. One of the things that's changed for me is just putting things into perspective around how men show up and how men have shown up. So you don't have to go too far back. Maybe to my grandparents, perhaps even my parents to some degree, where the relationship, the way things were set up in the house, men are going out and working, earning money, and women are staying at home and running the household. And that puts men in a position of power because they're holding the purse strings. And that may well be the part of the root of what's called toxic masculinity today. it puts them in a position of authority within that house, and you can see some behaviour that comes with that power. But also, as we move forward through time, you get into post-war, post-World War II, women are increasingly finding their place in the workplace, going out and earning money themselves, and that power is being eroded. And the equality movement's come out, which has also prompted men to misinterpret, in my view, that equality movement as meaning that they have to suppress their masculinity. So you've got both of those positions out there in in society today. Men that are moving towards that toxic masculinity and trying to say we need to move back to having this very hard view of masculinity. Think of Andrew Tate, for example. And then you've got men at the other end of the extreme that are thinking they need to suppress their masculinity and show up as neutral, and to some degree expecting women to do the same. And this book is saying it doesn't take on either of those positions. Its position is this is what masculinity means, and this is how it can be used and how it can be misused. And what it's saying is, you should not suppress your masculinity. So forget the guys that are suppressing their masculinity and taking on a neutral role. That's not going to serve you well. Women are not going to trust you if you do that. But
because women have intuition, yeah.
Yes. But also, it's saying you should not be using your masculinity as a position of authority. You should not be using it to suppress women.
How do you use it? How do you use it?
How do I use it?
Yeah.
So partly it's recognizing that, this isn't a phrase that comes out of the book, but phrases I've heard elsewhere are things like grounded masculinity or being the benevolent alpha. And it's recognizing that masculine is seeking, it's driven by purpose, but it's also the calm in a storm, trying to be the rock or the lighthouse in that storm. Whereas femininity is in constant motion. It is that storm, and rather than trying to suppress your masculinity and go into motion, or not standing up and being masculine and being that rock for the storm to beat itself against until it's finished moving. It is trying to stand up and be that lighthouse and be that person that can be the rock for the feminine energy to move around, rather than trying to resist it. It's trying to support it. And I think recognizing, if you start to recognize what is masculinity and what is femininity, and using this book as your guide, then you can start to see, right, okay, I know how I'm showing up on a day-to-day basis. You start to get a better view of actually what is really important to you. And when you look back at some of the things that used to bother you, that they're not important. That's you sort of either trying to say, as a masculine, I should be respected and be authoritative, or it's you saying, no, I was suppressing my masculinity and allowing my feminine essence to come through, and getting upset about things that really don't matter to me. What also happens with that, if you step into that masculine frame, if you have a partner who's in their feminine frame, that polarity comes to the fore, and you have that back and forth from masculine to feminine, and you have a great relationship that sort of pulls and tugs at each other and pivots around each other. If you suppress that masculinity, your partner will probably end up suppressing their femininity to some degree and stepping into their masculine frame, at which point you become flatmates, you become housemates rather than in a relationship. If you go the other way and step into that authoritarian, that more toxic end of masculinity, then you're putting a barrier between you and your partner as well, and trying to force them into a wounded feminine state rather than an alive and vibrant feminine state. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. As you're talking, even though I must say you are very English diplomatic, you didn't answer directly my question, but yeah, English people will understand it anyway. anyway, we'll come back to that. But another thing which I was thinking that you have been reading recently, because the way we do it, he reads loudly the books every time we choose a book, we pick a book and we discuss on that. Another thing which maybe very shortly, I want your opinion, very direct, not going around, was a moment when you read like a woman is not a liar. You remember that? So if a woman is telling you, leave me alone, she's not lying if 5 minutes later say, please come back because I love you. Or if a woman is saying, I don't love you, is not lying if 5 minutes is telling you that she can't live without you. Or if a woman is upset and very showing her masculine energy, what is the duty of a man is just to go and show up and say, I love you, that's it. So there are little things that men, they have ego and they don't do it. And sometimes the man said, you told me to go, so I left, that's it. No, a woman is not lying if she's asking you to go, but she means you to stay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I remember that chapter. That was, and I remember reading it the first time when I was reading the book alone, and then I remember reading it with you. And that's one of the key chapters for me, because men, we're the idea of masculine energy and feminine energy starts to come through in this book. And for men, when we say something, we mean it and we stand by it. We are, our word is our bond. So, it's very confusing for us when you say, that's it, I'm done, I'm out, and we're thinking, Christ, that's it, the relationship's over, and not realizing that, I think the way the chapter goes, as you say, yeah, women are not liars, even when they change their minds. And it's about that. It's that the feminine energy is in this constant flow and will change its mind. And for men, it's not a case of taking that word at its face value and then trying to say, what do I do now, and starting to get your things together and moving out. But actually rising above it and trying and being that rock, that lighthouse, and letting that feminine energy that storm blow itself out, and letting that partner come back to you. And it's not about ego. It's not about trying to say, well, how do I score points on here? How do I be right? It's more about...
And another thing which I noticed in this chapter was many times men choose to say, you know what, let's talk another time when you're calmed down, when you... This is wrong, you can't do this to a woman. You can't just tell her, you know what, let's talk when you are normal. This is a normal flow of woman. No, you have to talk now. And what is something that men should do and should show up? Maybe we can explore. You can write a course about it. But I believe that it's so much needed that you need to address this more to the men, and because according to this book, I'm so happy. We read it together. We women are okay. We do everything right. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, it is. No, but the book is great at getting you to understand that and understand where that feminine energy is coming from and what it means. And I think there's again, it's not part of the book, but you touched on it. Don't go to bed leaving an argument sitting there. You need to let it play out.
In the room and say, okay, bye, I'm going to get the fresh air, and when you get normal, we can talk.
No, but at the same time, it's also not about trying to be rational and reason and talk it through, because as we know, that feminine energy is in constant flow and things will change, and what you say in one moment reflects how you feel in that moment.
And you're not lying.
No, you're not lying. In another moment, you will say something else which reflects how you feel in that moment. Yes. Whereas, men are looking at that as, I'm looking for a rational view, but that's not what you're getting. And that's where I think, men can get confused. But I want to come back to the ego point. Men then let their ego get in the way and think that they have to win this argument, when there isn't really an argument there to win. It's more about showing up and showing your love and showing that you're still there.
Excellent. Yes, you have got the book. Well, I thank you so much. I'm going to let you go because I want to bring you back, and I think if we really want to serve humanity, is to educate men. And it's our job as women to educate our boys, but also to invest in relationship education, because love is very easy to find, but it's not that easy to keep because it takes investment, and it takes energy, and it takes lots of team effort. And I'm very grateful you are showing me the way, and I would love you to come and show this more and more to a bigger audience. So thank you so much for, how do we say every day? Thank you for loving me.
Thank you for giving me a mic and letting me come to a global women event as a man.
Absolutely. Look, my duty is to bring you to the service, so we need to serve.